Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have an itinerary here or an agenda. I told Bob I'd be available to essentially answer any questions that the membership might have. I can't really comment on specific evidence, things of that nature. I can give you perhaps the best thing to do is give you a rundown on the status of the case right now and where it might go. We have, as you know, there was a lawsuit filed by People Productions back in February against Mateel. The Mateel then filed a counter lawsuit against People Productions and Tom Dimmick. Tom Dimmick then filed a lawsuit against Mateel, and the war started. There are a number of allegations back and forth on various different grounds. The primary allegations that the Mateel have made against People Productions is that they've breached their production contract. And of course, People Productions is saying that we breached the production contract. And the same counter allegations went back and forth between Mr. Dimmick and the Mateel. Mr. Dimmick is claiming that the Mateel violated the lease by terminating People Productions' production contract, and the Mateel is taking the position that the Mateel had the right to terminate that production contract and therefore didn't breach the lease. And in fact, Tom Dimmick breached the lease by excluding the Mateel from the Dimmick Ranch so that the Mateel could not go forward in 2007 and produce its own Bragg on the River event. Those are the basic allegations. In the early stages, different law firm was representing, filed a request for preliminary injunction, and at that point I was requested by that law firm to become involved because I'm more a litigator than I am anything else, which tends to be more a BSer than anything else. So I got involved. And the preliminary injunction was an attempt to get the court to order Mr. Dimmick to allow us to go back on the property and produce, and have the opportunity to produce the 07 show. That preliminary injunction was denied, which then, and the county made the decision that the permit, which frankly was the right legal decision, there was a lot of posturing that went on between the attorneys at the time to try to leverage positions, but the bottom line was that the county decided that the use permit is applicable to the land, not the event, and therefore it goes with the Dimmick Ranch property and not with the Mateel, so the Mateel did not have the control of the permit, and that's where it stands. The decision was made not to challenge that in court. It's a collateral issue. My advice to the Mateel was that there were arguments I could make, but it would be very costly, and I did not think that I would prevail on that particular avenue, and we would end up in the appellate court, and we would probably lose there. My recommendation was to marshal your assets and fight the war, not the battle, that we would probably lose. So here we are. We're in the process of taking depositions. I spent all day taking depositions today. The issues with regard to the lease were subject to essentially an arbitration clause. It has been carved out of the lawsuit and now is presently pending before a referee that essentially is going to make a decision. He's acting as a court. It's going to be a court trial in front of the referee. The referee is a retired judge from an arbitration association from San Francisco. He is quite costly. I have not been paid $100,000. The JAMS, the organization with the referee, has taken probably $20,000, $30,000, or $40,000, about $20,000 or $30,000 themselves, and we haven't even gotten to the arbitration yet. That is scheduled for January 28th. It's scheduled for 5 days. And that's not going to get continued again. We are going. And frankly, if this matter is not resolved, at least in concept, before that commences, it probably won't get resolved. That's my assessment, because then the die will be cast. We will have presented our case to the referee, and I think all sides, certainly the Dimmick side, will probably choose to find out what the referee has to say. If the referee rules against Mr. Dimmick, I can't even say what that would result in, frankly, because you would, I think, have a choice of attempting to gain what's called specific performance of the lease, meaning that you would have the right to re-enter the Dimmick Ranch under the terms of the lease in '08 and produce your own event, assuming that you have the time to do it. And thereafter, for the period of the lease, and you would be, in my opinion, awarded damages for having been excluded in '07. What that would mean to Mr. Dimmick, I haven't the foggiest. If the referee rules in favor of Mr. Dimmick, that would impact the rest of the litigation, because it would mean that Mr. Dimmick properly could have excluded you from the lease, terminated it, and you'd be left with a lawsuit with People Productions. If you win that lawsuit, what I would anticipate is that there would be a bankruptcy declaration at the far end of that on behalf of People Productions, and there would probably be very little in the bag to recover. And if you lose it, then People Productions would have a large money damage award against Mateel, which I don't know what your finances are. I know very little about that, but unless you have a large pot to pay a damage award, you basically have your facility, and that's it. I guess the bottom line here is that the way I view this litigation is that both sides are risking the nuclear option. I think that going forward to completion, whoever loses this case is going to be in a world of hurt. And any litigation is risky all the way down the line. And I continually beat that drum and said that mantra. I think we have a good case, but I'm not the judge, and all of your marbles are in one basket, so to speak, with regard to this referee at the end of this month. So I'm optimistic, but there is certainly no guarantee, and I'm very supportive of the board's work. I think they've done an excellent job. The way I have handled it to date, and the way the board has handled it to date, and I think it's the appropriate way to do it, is it kept the attorneys out of it. And it was my understanding that significant progress had been made, there had been significant dialogue that had been established, and then unfortunately the attorneys have sort of gotten back into it, and my perception is that it's gone backwards since that point, and that's very disappointing. So there we are. Anything else you want me to cover? Or have I covered too much?
So that's in a nutshell where we stand. We're trying to be as open and straightforward about what's on the table as we can. We don't feel that we're